So today's video, I'm going to try to get into it really quick without, talking too much. So what we're going to do today is, if you guys remember, I did a video at the Combat Air Museum in Topeka, Kansas on the Forbes Field Air Base. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a specific plane, and the specific plane that we're going to talk about is the F-4 D2 Phantom. Now, the F-4 Phantom 2. Sorry, guys. So, the particular plane we're going to talk about, and I'm going to put up the picture probably right now, was the Phantom that was in front of the National Guard Museum, which that's completely separate from the Combat Air Museum. So, what's special about this plane is it was actually used in Vietnam, and it actually shot down one MiG-21. Now, what is important here is the actual person who actually flew this plane, and I was kind of blown away when a viewer reached out and told me about it. Now, on some of these plaques, I don't understand, some of the abbreviations of what it means. I know some of them, talks about the plane, the serial number and all that, and the Air Force base that it was from. So they reached out and kind of, told me a little bit about it. So I was fascinated. Now, who flew this plane was a very decorated soldier in the Vietnam War, and probably one of our better pilots. And what's cool is he was technically the only Air Force pilot that was an ace of Vietnam. So for some of you guys that might not know what an ace is, if you're a pilot in the military and you're a fighter pilot and you shoot down an enemy MiG or like an enemy plane, then once you get to 5, once you rack up your kills to 5, that means you're an actual ace. Now, also what's cool about this is through all my research, I looked to see who the last ace of the military was, and it actually is Brigadier General Steve Ritchie from Vietnam. So he was the last ace of any conflict that America has been in since then, from all my research anyways. So I figured we would talk about this F-4 Phantom, and we'd talk about him and give a little bit of a history about him, because he's a very decorated general. And you know what? He's an ace, so that means he got 5 kills in Vietnam, so that's pretty impressive. Okay, guys, so let's start talking about Brigadier General Richard Stephen Ritchie. Now, General Ritchie was born on June 25th of 1942 in Reidsville, North Carolina. He grew up in Reidsville and was a star quarterback for the Reidsville High School. Now, after graduation in 1960, he received an appointment to the U.S. Air Force Academy with the class of 1964. In 1962, as a walk-on, Ritchie became the starting quarterback of the Air Force Falcons varsity football team, and he retained that role until 1963. He played his final game in the 1963 Gator Bowl. In 1964, General Ritchie graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in Engineering Science and was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Air Force. Now, he entered undergraduate pilot training at Laredo Air Force Base in Laredo, Texas in August of 1964, and he finished first in his class in 1965. His first operational assignment was with the flight test operations at Eglin Air Force Base in Florida. Now, again, guys, I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. If it's not Eglin, if it's Eglin, or however you pronounce it. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. I don't know how to pronounce it properly. So, again, guys, I apologize for that. In Eglin Air Force Base, where he is one of the few second lieutenants selected to fly the F-104 Starfighter. General Ritchie then transitioned into the F-4 Phantom 2 2 years later at Homestead Air Force Base in preparation for his first deployment to Southeast Asia. Now, he was assigned to the 480th Tactical Fighter Squadron. He was also in the 366th Tactical Fighter Wing at Da Nang Air Base in South Vietnam in 1968. Now, General Ritchie flew the first FAC, which is FAC, mission in the F-4 Forward Air Controller program, and it was instrumental in the success of the program. He completed 195 combat missions. Upon his return to the U.S. in 1969, General Ritchie was selected to attend the Fighter Weapons Course at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada, where at age 26, he became the Air Force Fighter Weapons School's then youngest ever instructor. He taught air-to-air tactics from 1970 to 1972 to the best United States Air Force pilots, including his former Air Force Academy classmate, Major Robert Alfred Lodge, who later became his flight leader in Thailand and shot down 6 enemy MiGs. Now, Captain Ritchie volunteered for a second tour of combat in 1972, and he was assigned to the 432nd Tactical Reconnaissance Wing at Udorn Royal Thai Air Force Base in Thailand. Now, while flying the F-4 Phantom IIs with the famed 555th Triple Nickel Tactical Fighter Squadron, he shot down his first MiG-21 on the 10th of May of 1972. And then he scored a second victory on May 31st, which that is the plane that we're going to be talking about, is from his second kill. A third and fourth kill on July 8th and a fifth kill on August 28th. All of the aircraft he shot down were MiG-21s, and all were shot down using the much maligned AIM-7 Sparrow radar-guided air-to-air missile. Ritchie's 5 victories made him the Air Force's first and only pilot ace of the Vietnam War. Now, Ritchie himself made this comment about his 5th kill, and he stated, "My 5th MiG kill was an exact duplicate of a syllabus mission at Fighter Weapons School. So I had not only flown that as a student, but had taught it probably a dozen times prior to actually doing it in the combat." Now, the Triple Nickel pilots had an advantage over other U.S. air crews. 8 of their F-4D Phantoms had the top-secret APX-80 electronic set installed, known by its codename Combat Tree. Combat Tree could read the IFF signals of the transponders built into the MiGs to allow the North Vietnamese GCI radar to separate its aircraft from that of the Americans. Now, this was displayed on a scope in the weapons systems officer's cockpit. The Combat Tree allowed the Phantoms to identify and locate MiGs while they were still beyond visual range. Now, after completing 339 combat missions, totaling over 800 flying hours, Ritchie returned from his second combat tour as one of the most highly decorated pilots in the Vietnam War, which he has quite a few medals, awards, and badges, guys, and we'll talk about that here in a minute, and I'll read them off. So Ritchie opted to leave active duty in 1974, and he joined the Colorado Air National Guard and continued his military duty in a flying status while pursuing his civilian career. He later transferred to the Air Force Reserve. After his promotion to Brigadier General in the Air Force Reserve in 1994, Ritchie became the mobilization assistant to the commander of the Air Force Recruiting Service. For 6 years, he traveled across the country, speaking to approximately 1,100 audiences in support of Air Force recruiting efforts. He also flew more than 100 air show performances in the T-38 Talon. Brigadier General retired in January of 1999 after flying in his last air show at Randolph Air Force Base in Texas. Now, another cool thing was when we were actually up there at the Combat Air Museum, we actually got to see a few T-38 Talons that were actually doing takeoffs and landings up there. It was really, really cool. Got to see him through a fence, so that was actually pretty cool to see. Now, he logged over 4,000 flying hours during his Air Force career. Now, Ritchie has held various executive positions in private life, in his civilian career, including 6 years at the Adolph Coors Company, now Coors Brewing Company, and the Heritage Foundation, where he was the special assistant to Joseph Coors. In 1985, he was appointed the director of the Office of Child Support Enforcement, reporting to the Secretary of Health and Human Services. In 1987, he was assigned to the Mobilization Policy and Plans Directorate at the Office of the Secretary of Defense. He now lives in Colorado Springs, Colorado, working as a motivational speaker. Periodically, he flies demilitarized civilian F-104 starfighters on the American Air Show circuit for Starfighters International that's based in Florida. Now, these are the medals, awards, and badges that Brigadier General Ritchie is achieved during his military career. Let's see, so let's read them off. First, he has the Air Force Cross. Second, he has an Air Force Distinguished Service Medal. He has a Silver Star Medal with 3 bronze oak leaf clusters. He has a Distinguished Flying Cross with Valor Device, silver, and 3 bronze oak leaf clusters. Then he has just a regular Distinguished Flying Cross. He has a Meritorious Service Medal. He has an Air Medal with 4 silver oak leaf clusters, an Air Medal with silver and bronze oak leaf cluster, an Air Force Commendation Medal, an Air Force Outstanding Unit Award with Valor Device, a National Defense Service Medal with a Bronze Star, a Vietnam Service Medal with Silver and Bronze Star, the Air Force Overseas Short Tour Service Ribbon with Bronze Oak Leaf Cluster, the Air Force Longevity Service Award with 2 bronze oak leaf clusters. He has an Armed Forces Reserve Medal with Silver Hourglass. He has an Air Force Small Arms Expert Marksmanship Ribbon. He has an Air Force Training Ribbon. He has the Republic of Vietnam Gallantry Cross Unit Citation Medal, a Vietnam Campaign Medal, a Command Pilot Badge, and he was also awarded the Vietnam Air Gallantry Cross. Now, on his paperwork for his Air Force Cross citation, it says, "The President of the United States, authorized by Title 10, Section 8742, United States Code, takes pleasure in presenting the Air Force Cross to Captain Richard S. Ritchie, United States Air Force, for extraordinary heroism in military operations against an opposing armed force as an F-4 aircraft commander. 550th Tactical Fighter Squadron, Udon Royal Thai Air Force Base, Thailand, in action on the 28th of August, 1972. On that date, while leading his flight to its assigned position deep in hostile territory, Captain Ritchie engaged and destroyed a hostile aircraft while it was attempting an attack on another flight of Allied aircraft. Through superior maneuvering and use of aircraft capabilities, and in complete disregard for his own safety, Captain Ritchie was successful in destroying his 5th North Vietnamese MiG-21. Through his extraordinary heroism, superb airmanship, and aggressiveness in the face of the enemy, Captain Ritchie reflected the highest credit upon himself and the United States Air Force." Now, he has some combat achievements that he's earned, and one was the 1972 the McKay Trophy for the most significant Air Force mission of the year, the Air Force Academy's 1972 Jabara Award for Airmanship, the 1972 Armed Forces Award presented by the Veterans of Foreign Wars for outstanding contributions to the national security of the United States. Now, also, he was awarded something called the Congressional Gold Medal. The Congressional Gold Medal was created by the U.S. Mint and the highest civilian honor Congress can give on behalf of the American people. On May 20th, 2015, leaders from the U.S. House of Representatives and Senate presented the Congressional Gold Medal to the American Fighter Aces Association at the U.S. Capitol Visitor Center, Emancipation Hall. Now, this is interesting. More than 60,000 American fighter pilots engaged in aerial combat during World War I, World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War. Of those pilots, only 1,447 earned the title of Fighter Ace by downing at least 5 enemy aircraft. Brigadier General Richard Stephen Ritchie was one of them, having been credited with 5 aircraft shot down in aerial combat. At the time of the presentation of the medal, only 75 of those aces remained alive. Now, what some people have said about Ritchie was described by his peers as being a jock, and by General Robin Olds, who admired him greatly, as being brilliant, but thinking himself as God's gift, cocky and egotistical, which, for a pilot, usually a lot of them are, and rightfully so, with what they have to do with other people up there, protecting people on the ground, worrying about being shot down. Yeah, you got to have a little bit of cockiness and an ego to you to do that. And according to one of his intelligence officers of the 555th Tactical Fighter Squadron, Ritchie was often lacking in self-discipline, with a personal trademark of using too much Old Spice cologne. Ritchie's retort for that was that the pilot's locker room was too odoriferous.
Maximum protection against Odysseus, odoriferously, olfactory emanations.
Let's, cut. Let's just cut that. It's odiously, odoriferous, olfactory emanations.
Right.
Which basically you're just saying it smelled like shit. Pretty much. Anyways, I thought this was fascinating to learn about this gentleman and learn that he actually flew that aircraft and he was an actual ace. So I figured I would make a video and inform you guys of this update. And every time I find out something else about something, I will do this because I found this fascinating. I mean, the man he's highly decorated, and he was an ace, so he knew what he was doing. He was a great pilot. So yeah, and Robin Olds, I actually just watched a documentary about Robin Olds, and this guy was nothing short of being a badass himself too. Now, before I finish this story about Robin Olds and what he did, now you got to remember at this time in Vietnam that they weren't having a lot of success in the air, as you would think, because of a lot of the higher up politicians and some of the higher ups in the military. You know, they were giving them specific routes that they would run every day, the same pattern, and that would lead to, you know, like MiGs getting flown, flying up in the air and intercepting them. So they were flying the same paths, and you could only go in certain ways to Vietnam to do what you need to do and take out these MiGs. So you know, they were having a lot of rules that they had to follow, which kind of screwed them over, especially using the F-4 Phantom. The F-4 Phantom really wasn't a dogfighting plane. It was pretty much like an interceptor and a bomber. And what they were good at was from hitting from long range distances to where, you know, the MiGs wouldn't see them coming. They could shoot. But then, you know, the higher ups said, oh, you cannot shoot until you get visual confirmation. So that pretty much, you know, screwed the pilots that were piloting these Phantoms from shooting far away and avoiding it all. If they just would have let them do that and do their job, they wouldn't have had the problems, you know. But that's what I learned from watching a few documentaries and stuff about Robin Olds and about the pilots in Vietnam. That's just some of the little information that I learned that I thought was interesting. But yeah, Robin Olds, you know, get into his story. Basically, they were getting sick and tired of stuff like that happening and, you know, having to follow different rules. So he actually disguised most of his squadron as making his F-4 Phantoms look like Thunder Chiefs. And then they would go up and bait out the MiGs. And, you know, the story that I just watched last night, and they didn't think it was going to happen until they were getting ready to leave. And then all these MiGs started coming up, and they just started taking them out one by one. And it was a really fascinating story. But yeah, during that time, a lot of the pilots in Vietnam, some of them were having troubles because of that. You know, you could only go in a certain way into Vietnam. You had to fly the same patterns. And yeah, those politicians and those higher ups in the military were sure making some pilots pretty pissed off, I would assume. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I thought the information that I found out was fascinating. You know, going to one place and then learning something else later about that plane I thought it was fascinating, and just realizing how decorated Brigadier General Ritchie was pretty crazy, and I loved learning about it. So I'm gonna get off here, guys. Hopefully you all enjoyed the video, and if you like it, subscribe, and come back, and I'll be doing a lot more videos about stuff like this, and, you know, just some of the things that I do. But anyways, I hope you guys have a good day. Enjoy New Year's. Don't drink and drive, and make it home safe. So, and probably should get a designated driver too. So anyways, all right, guys, be safe. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I am out of here. Have a good one. See you later.